welcome to Backwards and Incompatible, the retrospective podcast where we fuck around and find out. I'm your host, Justin.
And my name's Garret.
My name's Chase. And oh my god, Justin's back! Never leave us
I
again,
know,
Justin!
Welcome
Yay!
back to the pod.
I've returned, not trapped at work today.
Yeah.
Whenever Justin's not on mic, everyone should be asking, where's Justin?
Yeah, if you don't ask where's Justin, like, we're gonna send a letter right out to you to give you your first warning.
Yep.
But it is good to have you back, though, Justin. We missed you dearly.
I don't know, Chase, like, talking with you, you know, it just like, boring.
I'm trying my best over here.
You guys flatter me too much.
All right, Garret, why don't you tell the beautiful people out there what we're talking about today?
Ooh, all right. Well, we are actually going to talk about Dragon's Lair and as well as the other games, the Dragon's Lair 2 and Space Ace, which was made by Don Bluth, or at least animated by it. And I grew up on Don Bluth. I think a lot of people can say they did. I really like the Secret of Nim, to be honest.
Yeah.
What about you guys? What was your favorite?
Like you, I also grew up on Don Bluth movies.
That's really all I'm familiar with is The Secrets of Nim.
We can talk a little bit about Don Bluth, the man himself. He used to work for Disney back in the 70s, but in 1979 he left the studio due to creative differences, let's just say.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you look at Disney now and it's like some things never change.
Yep.
After that, he formed his own studio, Don Bluth Productions, which would go on to create many classic animated films of the 80s and 90s. We got movies like The Land Before Time, An American Tail, All Dogs Go to Heaven, Secret of Nim, one of my personal favorites. What about Ferngully? Was that Ferngully? Was that one of his? No, it was done by Kroyer Films? Fi Films?
Was it the character's hairstyle? Because he's known for a distinct hairstyle in the male characters. Like, you know, that part way, kind of like dangle. A lot of the animation that Don Bluth produced was reminiscent of the 1930s and stuff like that, when like Snow White would come out, because really that was the big thing. Everyone thought that that kind of art style was a by time, like it's in the past, no longer can be achievable.
Yeah, Don Bluth definitely had a distinct art style to his movies. I will also say, while doing research for this episode and going through his line of work, one of the movies that really jumped out to me and gave me a blast from the past of nostalgia I didn't even know I had, this was a memory I had long since buried, was Titan AE. Did you guys ever watch that?
Oh, yes.
I know.
Yeah.
When I saw that, and then I looked up the trailer, I'm just like, holy shit, I have not thought about this movie in decades.
All right, so Titan AE, I'm going to give you a summary. So if you want to go watch it, here's your spoiler warning. And this is also for you, Justin.
Okay.
So Titan AE is about this guy. I can't remember his name, but it's Cole.
Kale, that's what it was.
Oh, the vegetable. Never mind. But basically, the world is collapsing. Everyone escapes, and the father of Kale and Kale separate, and we follow Kale on trying to uncover what his father did during that time they were apart.
Yeah, Titan AE, that movie notoriously did very poorly at the box office, and it more or less forced retirement on Don Bluth. He hasn't done a theatrical movie since, although I think he is trying to get something in the works in recent years, so here's hoping. But yeah, I grew up on The Land Before Time. I love that movie. Secret of Nim, I didn't really watch that as a kid. I didn't watch it until I got a bit older into my teenage years, but I think that's probably my favorite of his line of work, because to me, Don Bluth movies just encapsulate the sense of melancholy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
His movies have such a bleak and not depressing per se tone to them, but they just have such an emotional, downtrodden vibe and emotional core to his movies that you don't typically see in a lot of kids' movies, especially compared to Disney.
Nope.
Don Bluth movies have a very distinct style. They're very detailed backgrounds. The characters in general tend to be a little bit more detailed than you would expect of other animated movies. There's a lot of shading and dark color scheme, a very dark, natural color palette to a lot of it, especially in this time during the 80s. You see this in both Space Ace and Dragon's Lair. They really encapsulate that 80s dark fantasy, old school sci-fi aesthetic to them, and I am all here for it.
Yeah, and actually, what got big exposure to Don Bluth animation was actually Dragon's Lair.
Well, I think it was Secret of Nim that got Rick Dyer's attention to Don Bluth.
Yes. Well, I think we should go into making of Dragon's Lair. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think we can get into this, unless you guys have any last notes on Don Bluth movies in general.
All right.
I don't have anything I can add to that.
All right. Let's get started with this. Dragon's Lair, released in arcades on June 19th, 1983. Developed by Advanced Microcomputer System Projects and published in North America by Cinematronics.
Mm-hmm.
It was directed by Don Bluth and produced by Rick Dyer, who had the original concept pitch for the game. This is the oldest game we've talked about and probably will, at least for the foreseeable future. It's really interesting to go back to these essentially primordial days of video. Well, you can't really call it primordial, but these very early days of the video game industry, back when arcades ruled the earth and home consoles were just, well, simplistic compared to what they would become just a few years later with the NES. But even from a development standpoint, it's really fascinating to see how these games were made.
Yeah, because apparently on the team, there were apparently only 13 animators, because, Don Bluth Animation was still a small company, and it was approximately 50,000 frames. That's about 1,430 every minute. And by the way, I'm getting this information from a documentary, The Making of Dragon's Lair. It's posted on YouTube. I looked up Amiga Junkie. They just posted it, but I thought that you, the listener, should definitely listen to it, unless you want to hear it from our beautiful voices.
How dare you cross-promote competing content, Garret?
I just want to cite my sources.
Oh, okay, understandable. Have a nice day.
Now, Rick Dyer, he actually developed an idea. Guess what? Guess where he developed it at? Where do you think he did?
Burger King.
McDonald's.
Well, think of a house. Think of which part of the house.
Basement.
The attic.
Close. You're thinking in the right areas, but think more basement, hard rock kind of stuff.
Garage.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, I feel like, I don't know what it was from the 70s up to the 90s, but the garage was just the centerpiece of American culture and early corporate ideas. I think, Apple got their start out of someone's garage, and how many bands
Wasn't that also how Amazon started too?
Yeah, I think I've heard that too. The garage, it was a centerpiece of late 20th century Americana.
I can always think of the meme where, look at all these successful people. They got up off their butt and they did it. What do you have? I don't have a garage.
Yeah. I mean, also keep in mind, a lot of those guys, even though they did start in garages, they also had they had a lot more money than your average person does.
Yeah.
People always look at Mark Zuckerberg of oh, he dropped out of school to create Facebook. And I'm like, A, he dropped out of Harvard, so he already had a lot of very deep connections. And B, he came from a much wealthier background than 80% of people in America. So keep that in mind.
So Rick Dyer, he actually, in the garage, he made a sort of game, and it was a decision-based game. So he wrote and sketched onto a cash receipt paper, and he installed it into this kind of computer that whatever choice you made, it would cycle through really fast to the next part that choice would, the outcome of that choice you chose beforehand. And really, you can see that style go into Dragon's Lair, and really, with the video that it came out, really changed arcade games forever. It used to be just Space Invaders and stuff like that, but now we have our first video.
Yeah, this was right around the time arcade games really started taking off. Even for the time, these were such a unique novelty. No other games looked like this. These were essentially interactive animated short films. Graphics-wise, they were way ahead of the time. I mean, that makes sense. They were on laserdisc. And you look at all the other arcade games from around the time, like you said, Space Invaders or even Donkey Kong or Pac-Man. And then you look at this. This had to have been absolutely mind-blowing to arcade gamers back in the day.
Yeah. And actually, when it came out, this is according to Rick Dyer from the video, around 30 million orders for the game were within 40 days of its launch, which is insane.
And it's easy to see why. The game is very addicting to play. So my personal history with Dragon's Lair and Space Ace is when I was very young, on my mom's desktop computer, she had the CD-ROM port of Dragon's Lair and Space Ace. And I just remember being a very young kid just messing around with these games. And I think their simple controls were very beneficial to a young developing Chase's mind where, okay, you just have up, down, left, right, and the attack button. That's all you gotta do. 5 buttons, that's all there is. Just push the buttons, that's all you gotta do. And yet, despite that, I never beat these games as a young kid. They required way too much reaction time or memorization that toddler me could comprehend.
Could you have beaten them, Justin?
No, probably not. I've always been bad at those type of games as well.
Yeah, the QTE.
I would just die over and over and over again.
Spend $40.
Yeah, that's basically what they are. They are just QTE games. Although, now that I think about it, the first Dragon's Lair game, the rooms you go through are completely randomized, so in a way, they're kind of a precursor to roguelikes in that you don't know what room you're going to get next.
It apparently takes 11 minutes for you to go through the entire game.
Well, we should probably talk about what the game actually is about. So, Dragon's Lair is a fantasy game starring Dirk the Daring.
Ooh, what a name.
I mean, design-wise, he's nothing too special. He's kind of generic hero, knight, himbo kind of guy.
Yeah, guy's a little backpack and everything.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a forgettable design, but it's a very classic fantasy design. You don't really see it a whole lot anymore, but do you guys think he kind of sounded like Homer Simpson whenever he would scream or yell or something? He sounded a lot like Homer.
I mean, yes, I didn't really notice.
Yeah, I guess Dirk is kind of like kind of derpy, but I think that's what's supposed to make him lovable and connecting with the people.
He's a bumbling hero kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't think he has any actual lines of dialogue. It's just his screaming and,
Whoa! Ah!
Yeah, he's a Link type of protagonist.
Mhm. And then every now and again, as you're traversing through, why are we going through this castle, Chase?
Well, it's because it's the tried and true fairy tale story that Dirk has to rescue Princess Daphne from the dragon Singe, and oh boy, Princess Daphne. All right. Save me! Okay, like I said, Daphne just saying, save me, has been burnt in my... There were 2 lines in both of these games that they resurfaced in my mind. One was Daphne going like, ooh, save me! And the other one was in Space Ace with, I think Kimberly was her name.
Yes.
At the very beginning, she's like, there's Borth's ship! When she said that, I was warped right back to my mom's office computer. I'm 5 years old again. That just sent me on a time warp right there.
Dang, Chase, you freaking old fart.
Not that old. I'm in my mid to late 20s. Shut up. But yeah, Princess Daphne, she is damsel in distress.
Mhm.
If Dirk is just generic knight, she is generic princess, come rescue me.
Did you ever notice how during the entire situation she seems very calm too? During that lost battle, she's just very, very chill about and just smiling the entire time.
Maybe she's just got a good read on the situation and she's just having a fun time.
Yeah.
Can't blame a girl for knowing what she wants.
Yeah.
Although, on the other hand, the developers did quite literally base her design off of Playboy models, and then you look at her outfit, and she's wearing very revealing lingerie, and then the dragon keeps her in a glass jar.
She's going to be a centerfold. Also, back to her attitude about being so calm when the dragon tries to, smash your intestines out of your ass. Woo! Woo! Shut up!
She is super promiscuous and flirtatious, because you get all the way into the actual dragon's lair, Dirk sees her, and she's just like, oh, the dragon! Oh, you have to use the magic sword, tee hee hee.
She just stands out so much more of everything compared to everything else.
I mean, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with a woman wanting to express herself sexually.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just that this is very obviously for the male gaze. Somehow I don't think the developers had feminist ideals in mind when designing Princess Daphne.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Let's be fair, this dragon, he's been out there all day burninating the countryside and the peasants. He comes back to his castle after a long day, and then this asshole Dirk just breaks into his home, kills all his best friends, breaks down his door and makes his floor crumble, and he's just invoking castle laws right here, literally.
Yeah.
Also, the castle is not that big, but there are so many rooms and chasms in this fortress.
Mhm.
Classic fantasy, bigger on the inside and all that, don't dwell on it.
He's also kind of just dragging her. We see his hand around the princess, dragging her throughout the castle.
That is true. He did abduct her, but
Don't sympathize with the dragon.
well, yeah, let's not blame the victim here, I guess.
No victim blaming.
But let's talk about this castle. There are some really imaginative and interesting fantasy tropes on display throughout this game. There's potions that you shouldn't drink because it'll turn you to dust. There's the Crimson Sorcerer. Oh, did anyone else get Dark Soul vibes from a few of these enemies?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, especially the Black Knight.
Was Dirk the first one to master the dodge roll?
Yes, of course.
Oh, man.
The founder.
That Horseman segment really reminded me of Disney's Sleepy Hollow, the Headless Horseman. Maybe it was the maniacal laughter that did it. Also, how nice of the dragon to put up warning signs on the rapid section, like, ye old whirlpools.
He doesn't want to fuck with OSHA or the IRS.
Yeah, you gotta put out all your warnings and everything. But what were your guys' favorite rooms?
I like the Lizard King section, because that's where Dirk's sword gets stolen from him, so he can't fight back against the Lizard King, who's just trying to bonk him on the head because he's too horny.
Yeah.
Before I move on to my favorite, I do want to talk about the Lizard King while we have it here. So, like, is he just the lord over the minions, or do we not really have much lore? I couldn't find really anything.
I like to think he's the dragon's, like, lazy roommate who just sleeps on his couch all day. I mean, he's in a bathrobe.
I kind of figured it was just kind of like his more higher up, like, second command type dude.
There were also the Giddy Goons, I think they were called. They were these baboon purple monkey things with elongated red lips.
That sounds right.
You know what they reminded me of? They reminded me of that one female alien in Return of the Jedi, the one that in the Revisioned or whatever that sings that really cringy song. Slice Noodles.
You mean the ones that are like come out of their face like a foot long?
That's what they reminded me of. They just want to give Dirk a kiss with their long lips. Kiss, kiss.
What's with their butts?
They're baboons, so makes sense.
Yeah, I know, but it looked like
very weird design.
What it looked like it was too red and puffed out. They really emphasized that.
The Bone Hall or the Crypt Keeper skeleton ghouls, those were really cool looking. I like those.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, can we talk about the lighting, like the background lighting through these rooms?
Yeah, these rooms, I know we praised Don Bluth earlier, but yeah, this game looks so well animated and so pretty looking.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And I just like, it's nice to be able to watch it be played versus playing it, because I feel like during playing it, you would not be able to appreciate everything going on.
Yeah, the quote-unquote gameplay is super fast-paced. You have to be very quick on the draw to hit those buttons. You gotta understand what the right order... You really gotta understand what door to open or what action to take, because if you hesitate for the splittest of seconds, game over.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I know this game was very infamously a quarter muncher for arcades back in the day. I think there's a moment in Season 2 of Stranger Things where the kids play Dragon's Lair at an arcade, and they just get a game over and are like, stupid overpriced piece of shit.
Yeah, 50 cents a play. Apparently, there was a kid who was on the documentary that said he spent $42.50 to finish that game.
I find it funny how we complain about microtransactions and all that today, and then you go back to arcades where you had to pay for each life, and I'm like, some things never change.
That's just how you used to play video games.
Very first game to really gouge out money was arcade games.
I mean, yeah. While we're on the subject of bizarre rooms in the castle, what was up with that ball hall or pool room where like there's giant pool balls just rolling around and Dirk has to dodge them?
Yeah, the big round concave like shaped one.
Yeah, it was like this. What was up with... I want to know what purpose of that room was, because it just felt really out of place.
Yeah.
Maybe it's to show that the dragon likes to get out and he invites some friends over.
Yeah, he's got hobbies. Him, the Crimson Sorcerer, and the Black Knight, they're just chilling out. The Black Knight room was really cool. I like how he taps the ground and the lightning shoots out across the tiles. That was just a fun puzzle.
That hall was my favorite hall because it stood out so much.
The one favorite one, I guess, for me would have to be the one I can think of is the runway, where you have to kind of like run forward, jump to the left, jump back into the middle, run forward again, and then you fall into like a pit of snakes and stuff like that. Like,
a lot
that's
of snakes.
Yeah, but I don't know, that one just stuck with me. But oh no, the horse. I love the horse sections.
Yeah, the mechanical horse.
It's like the sci-fi kind of aspect going on.
You get a ton of variety here. I like to imagine this is just what a one-player D&D campaign is like. Like, Dirk really pissed off his DM for this, I have to say.
What if it was based off of D&D? That would be kind of cool.
I mean, it was the early 80s.
Someone's like just one-shot campaign.
The DM is just like, fuck you guys, I'm just throwing everything at you.
We're speed running.
But yeah, at the end of the game, Dirk finds the magic sword, which the dragon conveniently just leaves lying around next to where he sleeps.
Yeah.
I guess he considers the magic sword to be his prized possession next to Daphne, but I'm like, that's like keeping a loaded gun right next to your bed, man.
It's just on the shelf.
And so he slays the dragon, rescues the princess, and they lived happily ever after. And that's Dragon's Lair, the first game. It's since been ported to a lot of different systems and consoles over the years. I remember there was a PS1 port of the game. A lot of them have very different versions. One that stood out to me was Dragon's Lair 3D Return to the Lair, which was released in 2002 on the GameCube, Xbox, and PS2. That one was essentially a 3D remake of Dragon's Lair with but there are a few differences. The villain from Dragon's Lair 2, Mordok the Wizard, he's the main villain of the 3D one. But yeah, that game looks kind of fun. You know, nothing special, but I wouldn't mind giving that a playthrough.
It was interesting to kind of like come across it, but to be honest, it never really sparked my interest.
Yeah, I think there was like a failed Kickstarter for a movie too.
Yeah, I remember that. I think Don Bluth announced that like around the time. Never mind. Let's see. Dragon's Lair also had, for a brief time, an animated series in 1984. Only 13 episodes, though, so didn't last very long, but it was a thing. I think there was also a comic book series as well. All right, what about you guys? Any other final thoughts on the first Dragon's Lair?
I guess, I do want to explain the art style, like, how they kind of, like, went. So, they would do these drawings, and then they would overlay them on top of one another on a clear glass panels, and like they put them over top of each other in like a lasagna.
Video game lasagna, my favorite.
Lasagna. So then they would take a picture, and then they just take it out, put in the parts they needed, take a picture again. And that's what really helped create the background, because they could put like I think different shadings of color behind it or something like that. I'm not exactly sure how they did the lighting, but at least with the animation, can you imagine you are technically an animation technician, and all you have to do is just take a picture, take out the right slide, put in the right slide, take a picture again. Imagine how long that must have taken for 11 minutes.
Man, I always look back to these analog days of media creation, especially for animation in video games, and it's like, how did people get things done back then? Yeah, I just think back to those days, and I'm like, how did anything get made?
Yeah.
All right, so that was the first Dragon's Lair, just a neat little novelty. But, as mentioned, the game was very popular, so much so that years later, on June 16th, 1991, once again in arcades, a sequel to the game was made, Dragon's Lair 2, Time Warp. Let's do the time warp
More like
again.
fever dream.
Yeah.
It was a fever dream to go through. Holy crap.
Well, I knew this game existed because it was part of the CD-ROM collection. I never played it myself, probably because I never finished the first one and I was too scared to start the second. So this was my first time seeing anything related to 2. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening?
So first you're running from the in-laws. Let's start with that.
Apparently it takes place several years later. Dirk and Daphne have gotten married and they had a lot of kids.
A lot.
He could not get off her.
Well, let's just say that whenever Daphne wanted Dirk, she left the R out.
Oh no.
Oh, wow.
Took you a second.
Oh, God.
Garret saved me.
No. All right. So, apparently Daphne gets kidnapped again. And
This time by a wizard.
The Wizard Man.
Yeah, by the warlock.
Gargamel?
I don't know.
Garbage smells.
I must get my hands on those healthy purple berries.
I like how the in-law was pretty much chasing you, trying to kill you while she was like, go get Daphne back.
Didn't she also have like a Viking opera singer look?
Yeah, she had like one of those stereotypical opera when the fat lady sings type of look. She's chasing Dirk around with a rolling pin like, you better rescue my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
At first I thought, oh, okay, she very much reminded me of the Red Queen from Alice in Wonderland. And then later they actually go to Alice in Wonderland and she's just straight up the Red Queen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Also, let's talk about that section. So, Dragon's Lair 2, The whole, I guess, gimmick with this one is time travel. Dirk finds a talking time machine, which, I gotta say, the way this time machine spoke, it really gave me Terry Pratchett Discworld kind of vibes. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be based off of the H.G. Wells time machine specifically, because there's kind of a resemblance there, I guess.
Yeah.
One of the eras, I guess you can call it, that you go to it's just Alice in Wonderland, and I'm surprised Disney let them get away with this, because this is just straight up Disney's Alice in Wonderland. Like, the character designs are right from the Disney version.
Yeah, I mean, but weren't a lot of the places also just like different like fairy tales instead of just different time periods?
I think the first one you go to was this prehistoric land before time, area where there's dinosaurs, but also bat centaurs. Dirk takes a page out of Kratos' book by equipping himself with Icarus wings to chase after Daphne in the sky, so there you go.
Dirk did come first. Dirk's like the OG God of War. He is the original God Slayer.
The next Dragon's Lair game begins with Dirk chopping down trees while mourning Daphne. Boy. Yeah, then there's also the Garden of Eden that Dirk travels to, where he gets chased. Yeah, okay, let's address this. This game is very fat-shaming.
Yeah.
There's a couple female characters that are overweight, and the game very much tells you, oh, you better run away from them. Eve is chasing Dirk, trying to kiss him, and it's stupid.
Yeah.
I feel like it was meant to sort of relate to some of the culture for like young boys back then. You know, they would always run away from the girl that was trying to kiss them, which...
Yeah, but also that she is conventionally quote-unquote unattractive doesn't really help.
Hey, more woman means more love needs to be given.
Also, hey, early jiggle physics, guys.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, these games don't have the best representation for women, I will say that much.
Yeah, but that's also part of the time period as well.
It's just a relic of a different time.
It's just nice to see how, well, I guess it's not nice to see. It's interesting to see these games just kind of like reflect the culture that was.
Yeah, I know in Space Ace, Kimberly, she's wearing a mini skirt because that whole game's thing is old school sci-fi, and there are a couple panty shots of her, and I'm just like, really, guys, really? They just couldn't resist.
Gotta get it flashed somehow.
Going back to Garden of Eden, though, can we talk about the two snakes, the Snake Brothers, for a second? Because what is happening here?
Satan had a brother?
Well, yeah, there's that, the fact that there's two of them, but I mean, the first one sounds like a typical snake, I guess. He's all like, heh, I'm a snake, slither, slither. But then for the second one, he sounds like, I guess, John Travolta or Christopher Walken or whatever, because he's all like, hey, you, Dirk the Daring, how about you rescue the princess for me, and I'll lead you to fame and fortune. I mean, I kinda get what they were going for, trying to give him a very con man type of vibe, I guess, but I just thought it was a very strange accent.
Okay, they were kind of remind me of, I guess, drug pushers a little bit. Trying to push the player to do something like peer pressure.
I mean, when you think about it, wasn't the Snake of Eden the first drug dealer? It's like, hey, Eve, why don't you eat this apple? First bite's free. There was also that Scottish snake when you first find the time machine. A lot of snakes in these games. There's a section of the game where Dirk time travels to Beethoven's time, and he's also tiny, like he's the size of a mouse and has to outrun Beethoven's cat. Beethoven's just playing away at his piano, and at one point he turns into Elton John for a hot second.
It's like a whole fever dream the entire game.
Yeah, this game just gets progressively more and more like an acid trip, which, I mean, it makes sense given animation. That was a staple of Disney and I guess Don Bluth at the time, but...
Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, can we talk about Egypt and the blood trap? That was interesting to see. It made me kind of queasy, to be honest. It was like a rivers of blood type thing.
Yeah, there was also a lot of spiders in the Egypt section. And, I didn't like the way they were animated. They were just uncomfortable.
You don't like spiders?
I'm fine with spiders. It's just, I don't know, something about how the spiders were animated in this particular style. Maybe it was the way their legs were moving so, I guess, fast and fluid. It just made my skin crawl for a little bit.
Well, we know Chase doesn't have a leg fetish.
We might as well talk about more Mordok while we're here, the dark wizard who kidnaps Daphne this time. Apparently the time machine is his brother, so what was he like a wizard who turned himself into a time machine, or his soul?
I thought he was referring to Dirk as the brother.
No, Mordok is the time machine's brother.
Oh, wow.
How does that even work?
I'm feeling cold, hard, cyborg.
So for the final boss fight, I guess you could call it, Mordok slips a corrupting ring onto Daphne, transforming her into this giant monstrosity Ganon-looking beast.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like how orcs were portrayed as pigs, like just saying like ugly and disgusting. I don't know. It's just a whole can of worms, fat shaming that we need to address a little bit.
Yeah.
It's an aspect of these games that really has not aged well. Really, just the depiction of women in general has not aged well from these games. But
No, definitely not.
But then Dirk slips the ring off of Daphne, saves her, puts it on Mordok, and this was a gruesome death, I gotta say.
You're gonna have to remind me exactly how he died, because I cannot for the life of me remember.
After he puts the ring onto Mordok, he rapidly ages, and he turns into like this round-looking lizard jabberwock kind of thing, to go back to Alice in Wonderland, and then Dirk just stabs him in the stomach, like pops a hole in him like a balloon, and he just turns to dust.
Oh, wow.
I mean, yeah, he was an asshole, but...
Dang. Like, don't steal Dirk's woman, I guess.
Dirk, he has annihilated entire pantheons.
Just gotta give him fatality.
So yeah, that was Dragon's Lair 2. What the hell just happened? What did we play?
I feel like they were on something, or they wanted to try to explore more, but they did too much.
It's what I imagine shrooms to be like.
Don't get me wrong, I appreciate the creativity and artistic design. It's just, there is no coherency to any of this. It's just, okay, we're in Blackbeard's time. Oh wait, now we're in Alice in Wonderland. Oh wait, now there's Beethoven and he's a giant for some reason.
I feel like if they would have done it like dimensional, like a little bit, I guess it'd make it a little bit more coherent, but it did feel like a jumbled mess in terms of pacing compared to the first one.
Yeah, I will say though, this game did refine the gameplay a lot more, because unlike the original one, which was all random, this one was much more linear, and it also added checkpoints.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout the game, there were golden treasures that Dirk had to collect at various points, and they served as save points for the game, so even if you died, you would just go back to the last golden treasure you picked up, so that was pretty useful.
Thank you for being nice.
To rewind the clock a little bit, speaking of time travel, let's go back to Space Ace. This was the direct sequel, I guess, more of a successor to Dragon's Lair before Dragon's Lair 2, because this was released on December 21st, 1983, just a few months later.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of funny to look back on this time period and how short game development was. Obviously, video games are far more complicated and larger in scope than they were back in the 1980s, but...
Yeah.
Kind of like how it is with Elder Scrolls 6 right now, too.
So Space Ace, this is the science fiction equivalent to Dragon's Lair. Once again, it does dive back into that classic old school sci-fi, very 70s, I have to say. It kind of felt...
Psychedelic?
Yeah, psychedelic, I guess. A lot of it is very 60s and 70s sense of futurism.
Yeah.
A lot of geometric shapes with contrasting color palettes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a visual aesthetic of sci-fi that is very firmly of this era.
Nerd. So, okay, well, Ace, I don't know, like, okay, so with Dexter, I loved normal Dexter compared to Mr. Super Dexter / Ace. I feel like Skinny Dexter was probably, like, an inspiration for Titan AE. I can see it. Small Dexter, not the big one.
Hey guys, look, it's the real Buzz Lightyear.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in Space Ace, the two characters, the one you play as are Dexter, aka Ace, and his girlfriend, companion?
He's a partner.
Yeah, partner. I think her name's Kimberly or Kimmy. They actually do talk compared to Dirk and Daphne. Like, they have more lines of dialogue.
Sassy.
Yeah, I will say this. Compared to Daphne, Kimmy, at the very least, has some semblance of personality. She's a little bit more sassy, I guess, for lack of a better term. Although by the end of it, she does just become a damsel in distress once again.
As a lot of those characters tend to do in games of that time period.
So, the plot of Space Ace it's a very old school sci-fi, very Buck Rogers. Ace and his partner Kimberly, they're investigating the Commander Borf, and Ace gets hit by Borf's Infanto Ray, which de-ages him to, I guess, like 12 years old or whatever. Maybe it just has to do with the fact that his name's Dexter, but young Ace's voice just reminded me of Mandark from Dexter's Laboratory.
Yeah.
Ha 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 ha. I apologize for the voice actor. I know this was kind of the point, but young Dexter, his voice was so annoying and whiny.
Really? I didn't think it was. I thought it was fine. Like, it just felt more natural and not facade compared to
Himbo Ace.
Exactly.
Throughout Space Ace, he's switching between his kid version and his adult version. So, like, this guy is the definition of a himbo. He's a caricature of the Captain Kirk type of archetype. He's the guy who's airheaded, a little overconfident. He's very suave.
I'm trying to be a bit suave.
I know this predates Futurama, but I see a lot of Zap Brannigan vibes.
Can we have Zap Brannigan?
Can we have Zap Brannigan? No, we have Zap Brannigan at home.
Oh, macho guy. He's also apparently really good at shooting.
Yeah, he has the laser pistol, and there's a point where he just murders one of the guards, and his response to that is, oh, far out.
Oh, yeah. Like, that dude had a family.
Okay, let's talk about Borf. This is a very old school sci-fi alien. He's just a guy that's blue, and he's got a distorted voice. Apparently, Borf was voiced by Don Bluth himself. Granted, his voice is modulated, so it's hard to tell, but yeah, that's Don Bluth voicing him. Garrett, you want to talk about Dark Ace?
Yeah, so Dark Ace, he's kind of like the dark counterpart, of course, and he's opposite to our protagonist, whereas our protagonist is quick and smart. This one is big and strong and dumb.
Are you really saying Ace is smart? He does not strike me as a very strategic kind of guy.
Well,
I feel like Kimberly's brain cells are doing the heavy lifting of this duo.
Yeah, but in terms of like fighting, he at least like does stuff to kind of get around his size difference, like having the Dark Dexter like shoot himself in the foot.
Okay, so these dark characters, are these like supposed to be like alternate like doppelgangers of like the characters or something?
I have no idea because there's no explanation. There's just, I guess Ace has a dark clone now who can turn giant and then he shoots his limbs off.
Bro used his Titan form.
Oh no. He comes right the fuck out of nowhere. You go over to what you think is Kimberly and you're like, oh sweet, there she is. We saved her. And then she just says, remember your dark side, and turns into this Dark Link-esque palette swap of Ace.
But do you ever notice how that's like kind of a trope for a lot of things like back in that time period where there's always just like an alternate like evil version of like the main characters or whatever?
I don't know. I think it might be like fighting your inner evil or something like that.
Or it's their inner demons.
Yeah, like Dark Link from Zelda. I just think it's a pretty easy trope to do. It's what if the hero was evil? You can tell they're evil because they wear darker clothing and they have a goatee. Section.
Yes. Or their skin slightly... never mind.
And at the end of it all, Ace defeats Borf by turning the Infanto Ray on him, turning him into a baby, and rescues Kimberly. And she picks up baby Borf and is like, aw, can we keep him? And Ace is like, oh, all right. And I'm like, this dude tried to murder you guys and kidnapped you. I would not keep him around.
Oh, but why? He sounds like such a great guy.
Well, like, maybe it's a nature versus nurture thing, you know? Maybe evil is his nature, but maybe with the nurture of Kimmy and Dexter, maybe they might become a better person. Who knows?
Yeah. Just to wrap this conversation up in a little bow, it is interesting to look back on this particular time for science fiction. I feel like post-Star Wars, a lot of sci-fi of the 80s was much more whimsical and adventure fantasy in comparison to what sci-fi had been for the last few decades. You know, the Star Trek, Foundation, Dune type of stuff.
I feel like Star Trek and Star Wars definitely pioneered it, and I want to say that was a big inspiration for this, especially Star Wars.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I enjoy that type of sci-fi as well. It's just that the 1980s, it was a time when a lot of sci-fi went much more fantastical, and you can see that a lot in Space Ace. Although I guess much like Star Wars, it's just due to drawing on the same source, the pulpy sci-fi serials of the 40s and 50s, which Don Bluth probably grew up on.
Yeah, he's old.
I mean, he is in his mid-80s, but...
Yeah, he's getting up there. Do you think he'll make it to a century, like, and beat out Betty White? Or...
I hope so.
Only time will tell.
Betty White needed to make it to her birthday, I'm just saying.
Either way, that was Space Ace and the Dragon's Lair games. Yeah, just interesting little novelties from the arcade era.
Yeah, it was fun. to really review this game, and it was nice to see the culture that it brought with it. It was a massive success, at least Space Ace and first Dragon Slayer was. That's number 2.
Yeah, I guess for their lasting legacy, other than ports and everything, they're just remembered by the people who played them, and they're like, oh yeah, they're very memorable games, I will say. They're very unique.
They are definitely their own thing.
As one reporter said in the documentary, participatory gaming entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a fun way to put it.
Nowadays, we call them QuickTime events.
Cuties.
What?
Oh gosh, no, QTE. Like I used to call them cuties. I now that has an entirely different meaning nowadays.
Oh yeah, Netflix. Speaking of Netflix and QTEs, remember Bandersnatch?
Yeah, I do.
I remember at the time Netflix was hyping Bandersnatch up as like this totally revolutionary idea. It's an episode of Black Mirror where you decide the plot, and I'm like, we've been doing this for a while now. Where have you been, Netflix? I don't think they've done something like that since then, have they?
No.
I think they did one work. I think I can remember if I think hard enough.
I'm reminded of that Futurama joke where they go to the movies that is hyping up its interactivity, and the options are like, what should Calculon do? Should he A, defeat the villain, or B, file his taxes? Vote now.
Defeat the villain?
I'd vote for taxes. I want to see Calculon do his taxes. Who cares about saving the world?
Yeah, you don't fuck with the IRS. They'll still come after you even after the world's dead.
He's got to do his civilian duty.
Yeah.
But you know what this game series kind of reminded me of is, you ever as a kid have those movies on DVD where if you go into the bonus features they have like those little games where you just control with the directions on your DVD remote. It reminds me of that.
Yeah, oh man. DVD like main menu bonus options. These are, talk about lost relics. Kids today who have grown up on streaming, they just don't know. Like, did you guys have the Shrek 2 DVD that had the American Idol minigame?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, we need to make an episode of Casual Cafe on these things.
I remember the Madagascar DVD. There was like a minigame where it was Skipper, the penguin. He would the whole gimmick was he would react to what questions you could ask him, like a magic 8-ball. And of course, in reality, it was completely generic responses that you could apply to anything. Yeah. But I just remember my brother and I, when we were kids, doing that and like, dude, interactive AI is right here in Madagascar.
I think the Surf's Up movie had that too. QTE type of games.
Man, you know what I really miss? DVD commentaries.
Oh yeah, like okay, I remember Brother Bear when they had the 2 Moose voice actors and they would comment throughout the entire movie, or even Lion King 1.5. I enjoyed Timon and Pumbaa.
Dude, the Lord of the Rings commentaries were so in-depth. Peter Jackson and all the cast members just doing commentary where they talk about their experiences working on the film, the decisions they made, all this behind-the-scenes stuff. It was really insightful, the Lord of the Rings stuff. It was also through that commentary that we learned that Viggo Mortensen broke his toe kicking that helmet.
Yeah, and boy, what method acting.
I feel like people really overestimate how much improv there actually is in movie and TV making, because there's you hear all these fun facts and tidbits floating around from people saying, did you know that this iconic scene was completely improv? And then you actually look into the story behind it and no, this was all fully scripted.
Yeah. Also, like a lot of scenes in movies where actors will actually get injured during certain scenes, but they just continue going on with it.
Maybe you come up with the idea before you start filming and then you rewrite the script to accommodate that. I guess that counts as like, oh, originally this wasn't in the script, then we had the idea and changed it at the last minute. I guess that's one way. I just feel like there's a lot of fun facts about improv or stuff like that wasn't scripted and they just rolled with it. Yeah. And then you actually see how meticulous and planned out a lot of filmmaking is. And it's like, no, we would never trust that up to chance right there.
Yeah, well, I mean, wasn't a lot of the genie's lines in Aladdin like improv'd by Robin Williams?
Yeah, I guess. I'm not too familiar with what the development of that was. It could have been that he improv'd them in the voice booth and they just rolled with it. Or it could have been, I'm going to change the script at the last second and do that. But it's Robin Williams. The man was a master of improv, so it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
One supposed fun fact about a classic movie that always bothered me was in Pulp Fiction, supposedly all the clocks say 4:20. No, they don't. You can watch the movie and it's not true.
It's kind of BS. I feel like they come up with the most random stuff, and then when you go back and watch it, it's just to get you to watch it again and waste your time.
Yeah, another one I always heard was that in Ferris Bueller, people are like, oh, did you know Ferris is actually a figment of Cameron's imagination? And again, you can watch the movie. Other characters interact with Ferris. He's not a figment of his best friend's imagination. Like, he's an actual person. The movie is told from Ferris's perspective. I feel like these type of theories are made by people who don't remember the movie very well, or they're betting people don't either. I don't know.
Yeah, pretty much.
It was always a dream.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing right there. You don't really see this a whole lot anymore, probably because everyone got tired of it, but
Yeah.
I remember for the longest time, people would take all these like kids cartoons like the Rugrats or Ed, Edd n Eddy and be like, it was purgatory, they were dead the whole time.
Well, isn't that also just a very, like, common, like, theory, too? It's like people just being like, oh, it's all in their head the entire time. Oh, they were in coma the entire time.
Pokemon isn't real, Ash is just in a coma.
Peppa Pig was actually a layer of hell. Like that kind of stuff. And it's just, whoa.
It was always like the most wholesome kids cartoons. Like no one was ever saying that about like Game of Thrones or anything. Like, oh, Game of Thrones, Ned was actually in a coma the whole time. Like, no one, it was always the most wholesome, cute kid stuff. Probably because it's more creepypasta that way. Like this innocent thing from your childhood was actually super messed up and dark.
And also just the whole idea of, like, everything has to have, like, a deeper, more secret meaning to it and stuff like that. Even though there's no meaning there at all. It's just an educational kids show.
It's just a show about babies, man.
Babies.
There was one theory that Fievel was actually dead and they actually met in the afterlife or some shit like that at the end of the movie. The only people that he actually sees are his family. Well, that's because his family's dead too.
Somewhere out there. That song is just so touching. Then they sang it in Community and...
Oh, yeah.
This is my favorite, but not really because it's, like, just the dumbest one or anything like that. I just find it kind of just funny how people just... This is where people's minds go all the time. I think everyone's heard the theory of where Ash's mom and Professor Oak are together. And Professor Oak is actually Ash's dad.
Professor Oak is being like, here's a Pikachu, get out of the house so I can get with your mom.
Well, I mean, every cop and nurse in Pokemon are sisters, apparently, so clearly there's some type of inbreeding going on.
Oh, God.
There's some weird stuff going on in Pokemon. The amount of theories you can get of Pokemon are ridiculous because of all the weird just stuff that goes on in it.
Alright, here we are. What if there are no humans in Pokemon? There's only like 10 humans and everyone else are Dittos. Dittos have infiltrated humanity in the Pokemon world and they're gonna replace us. The Dittos, they're coming after your kids.
The Dittos, no.
Ditto.
Yeah, and then there's always like the dumb creepypasta stuff as well. This isn't really fan theory, but I remember back in the day when all these really edgy, over-the-top, very poorly written creepypastas were everywhere, like Sonic.exe.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's always fun to read through.
And there I was, sitting at my computer playing Crash Bandicoot, and all of a sudden, Crash Bandicoot turned and looked at the camera, and he had photorealistic bloodshot eyes, and the screen went dark, and then he looked at me and said, I've read your internet search history, and I'm gonna tell everybody about it. And I said, nah.
What?
Oh, wow.
True story.
Chase, you've been reading too much Reddit.
This is scary, man. Give me chills.
Yeah, we kind of got lost in the sauce there, but that was Dragon's Lair, Dragon's Lair 2, and Space Ace.
It was a very saucy sauce.
We have fun here.
I guess we about wrap things up now.
Yep, I guess so.
If you'd like to get into contact with us, you can send us an email at backwardscompatiblepod@gmail.
Or you can leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice.
Exactly. Alright, well, that's about gonna do it.
We'll see you all next time.
Yay!
No, save me! Save me!
Okay.